Okay, so this is gonna be kind of a weird episode because I was initially thinking about doing a two in one, or a two for one. Meaning I'll talk about the Pacers Bucks series first, and then the Knicks Pistons series as well. But I figured that I can do like the two for ones for like after the play-in tourney, but that's like a whole lot of time I need to crunch in. But and that'll give me kind of like very little time to prepare, and I'm probably gonna have to do it the day before, or probably as the series commences with like the last two uh one through the last two games for that are the battle for the eighth seed. I probably might crunch it in probably the Saturday as we open up the NBA playoffs of 2025. But now I'm probably gonna have to do my Knicks Pistons preview later on today, probably later on tonight after I'm done with the two games. But I want to do focus on the Bucks Pacers series because this is going to be a very very interesting series too. So let's dive into it. Obviously, as you see, as y'all see here, this is a foe from last year's Game Three where Tyrese Halliburton hits the game winner over Patrick Beverley. As you see, Pat's Pat in the background with Miles Turner and Brooke Lopez. Um, so this is going to be a very interesting series because now you finally have a healthy Giannis on the other side. The only drawback is that there's not going to be much of Dame for the Milwaukee Bucks as Damian Lillard has a blood clot, which will prevent him from entering the series. He may play later on in the series as, let's say the series gets tight, but I highly doubt it though because, blood clots, they're hard to deal with, man. Like, I've never had a blood clot, but I've heard athletes like Chris Bosh deal with that. He tried coming back from it, and it only ended up being a career-threatening injury, I guess you can say. On the other hand, for the Indiana Pacers, this will be the first time in 11 years. So we're dating it back to when Paul George was still an up-and-coming player. George Hill was on the squad. They had Lance Stevenson, Roy Hibbert, David West, and they were the best team, I believe, in the Eastern Conference, if not the league. So there's some familiarity there. You know what I mean? For at least for Indiana fans, because it's been 11 years since Indiana's hosted a playoff game in the first round. Obviously, the East is not gonna run through Indiana, but it should be very exciting for Indiana fans because it'll be the first time since the Paul George, George Hill, Lance Stevenson era that they're actually going to open up the playoffs at home, similar to the Lakers. The Lakers are going to open up the playoffs at home for the first time since 2012 or 2011. I think 2012. Obviously, just like the Lakers, the East will not run through Indiana, but it is very exciting for Indiana fans who have been dying for this experience for years now. But here's my here's an interesting thing about this series. The Indiana Pacers are number 2 in fast break points, I'm looking at teamrankings.com, whereas the Milwaukee Bucks are number 12 are 12th in fast break points. And on top of that, the Bucks have been very, very suspect in when it comes to their transition defense. But again, some of those stats are deceiving because they did how do you say it, realign their core. Obviously, they had to sacrifice their longtime Buck Chris Middleton to the Washington Wizards for Kyle Kuzma, and it made the Bucks slightly better. But even with that, there's a lot left to be desired when it comes to Milwaukee. But I think, as the old saying goes, when the postseason starts, throw all these stats. Obviously, the whole fast break points. Indiana has a high-powered offense and yada yada yada. It's just eternal. You throw that stuff out the window. Now it's just a matter of will that offense sustain against the healthy Giannis? Because last year the Bucks were at a disadvantage without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Why? Because he's the only player that can match Indiana's tempo and speed of everyone on that Bucks team last year. Obviously, the Bucks struggled a lot defensively, and that had everything to do with them getting rid of a guy like Drew Holiday. And obviously, years before, they didn't get PJ Tucker back. They tried the Jay Crowder experiment. Jay ended up not being a reliable piece as A, he was hurt, and two, there were times he looked like he was washed and unplayable because of the fact he wasn't hitting his threes, and he was a disappointment for Milwaukee. But even with that, they try to retool everything they could with the amount of financial issues they had. They were able to get a guy like Gary Trent Jr. for a vet minimum, which I thought was great for him at the time. But Gary Trent, the thing about Gary Trent, his shot comes and goes a lot. And if Milwaukee really wants a chance without Dame, Gary Trent has to be the one to hit his shots. Obviously, Bobby Portis is going to do what he's done best for this team because he's done it for the last 4 seasons. Brook Lopez, he is who he is, but I think there are times where Brook Lopez is going to have to get off the floor, and I think Doc Rivers needs to realize that. And I'm going to get to Doc Rivers in a minute. So I do think the Bucks can beat the Pacers because of the fact they have a healthy Giannis. And I think Giannis alone at least will give them a fighter's chance to win. Even though I picked them to win, Giannis will do everything in his power to help his team win, even if they end up losing the series in like 6-7. And even though it is one game, and arguably that you can say it probably won't matter, a lot of people. There was a YouTuber. The Bucks had a miraculous comeback in the fourth quarter in that game. And there was a lineup that Doc Rivers used, which I really liked, that I think he should use as his closing lineup down the stretch against Indiana's team. And I think this lineup will be really, really, really critical down the stretch. Let's say if there's a tight game in Indiana, Doc Rivers should go to this lineup because I feel like this lineup will play very fast and they will match Indiana's tempo and intensity. So in this game, and I'm looking at my screen right now, in the Timberwolves comeback game, the Doc Rivers put out the lineup of Gary Trent Jr., AJ Green, Giannis, Portis, and I forgot to mention Kevin Porter Jr., who has also been a pretty well-rounded player for him because he's like a bootleg Middleton, if that makes sense. Because in years past, Middleton was always the closer for that team, and I still feel like he can be the closer for the Bucks right now. I kind of wish they didn't trade him, but if that means they sacrificed him for guys, obviously they didn't get Kevin Porter Jr. In the when they dealt Chris Middleton to Washington, but as they got Scoot Porter, he's been a godsend for him because Kevin Porter Jr. can hit all his threes. A pretty underrated defender in his own right. But I feel like with this lineup in particular, and I watched that whole 34-3 run. The Bucks play a lot faster, and they play a lot more synchronized on defense, and it feels like it gives a chance for Giannis to run the point, which is one of the more underrated aspects of Giannis's game. His ability to run the point when Dame is out, and it feels like, and this is not a knock on Dame because Dame, I would want to see him play again. I want to see him and Giannis on the floor together in tight games, but a lot of people have made the argument that it made Giannis a lot more comfortable, and he has floor spacers around him. And obviously Brook Lopez not being on the floor allows the Bucks to play faster. And keep in mind, this Minnesota team has been playing pretty well down the stretch of the regular season. But even with that, I feel like this particular lineup is a lineup that Doc Rivers should go to. Obviously, he's going to start Ryan Rollins in the absence of Dame, but having Kevin Porter Jr. off your bench, along with AJ and Gary Trent and Portis, it shows that the Bucks may have a better bench than people realize. And obviously, AJ Green, that kid with that unorthodox ass shot, he can really shoot that thing, man. And just like what I said in my video covering the Lakers T-Wolves series, when I said Jared Vanderbilt should be on Anthony Edwards and I feel like JJ should go to that strategy, I feel like Doc Rivers should put this lineup that triggered a 34-3 run against the Indiana Pacers because they play a lot faster. It allows Giannis to be Giannis, and Kevin Porter Jr. and Gary Trent gets a lot more wide open looks that way. Same with guys like Bobby Portis and AJ Green. But I want to get to Doc Rivers. This is Doc Rivers' most important playoff first round series since 2015 when he was the Clippers coach and he had to go up against the then defending champion San Antonio Spurs. That was the series where Chris Paul hits the game winner over Tim Duncan, and I think Matt Barnes knocks the ball away from Kawhi Leonard off a lob, and they ended the series 111-109. I don't know how the hell I remember that, but that's just, I'm a god at this. I'm not. But the one thing I will say, and because the thing is, outside of, I think, 2017, it was pretty meaningful as well. When Doc Rivers had a good team, right? A lot of his first round opponents since then were opponents that he should beat or he should have beat. Let's say it like this. 2020, a young Mavericks team took Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to 6 games, okay? And that series was pretty important then, but it was like they were supposed to beat the Dallas Mavericks, and it should not have taken them 6 games against Luka and those guys. 2021, they beat when he was the Sixers coach, he beat the Washington Wizards, but the thing is they were supposed to beat them because they didn't have a big to really battle with Joel Embiid in the post, right? And that's when they still had Embiid and Simmons at their absolute peak with Tobias and then Tyrese Maxey, who was a rookie. 2022, they were supposed to beat the Toronto Raptors. I don't know why the hell it got prolonged to 6 games. That was Doc Rivers' fault, but the thing is, he was supposed to beat that team. 2023, he swept the Brooklyn Nets. But even with all that, taken into account, this is going to be Doc Rivers' most important playoff series in the first round since 2015. And it's also important because of this. I'm going to give y'all a mind-blowing statistic. Y'all ready for this, man? Since 2015, Doc Rivers has lost 5 consecutive Game 7s, 2 3-1 leads blown, and a total of 7 playoff games where he's blown substantial enough double-digit leads. Think about that. Since this is a guy that people anoint as a Hall of Fame head coach, I think Doc Rivers is a really good head coach, but I don't like the fact how people overrate him as if he should be up there with like the Popovich's and all those other guys, because Doc Rivers has way too many blemishes. Okay, guys, Doc Rivers has only won 3 Game 7s since the 2010 finals. I think 3 to 4 Game 7s. And his last Game 7 came in 2015 when Chris hits the game winner over Tim Duncan. Right, so Doc has a lot of blemishes on his resume, and his legacy is already stained as is. Because of that, he lost 5 consecutive Game 7s. And let me give you guys the game multiple double-digit leads, all right? Game 6 against Houston when he was the Clippers coach, he blew a 19-point lead. James Harden was on the bench, and for some reason, Corey Brewer and Josh Smith turned into Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. 2020 against the Denver Nuggets, his last year as the Clippers coach, first year with Kawhi and Paul George. He blows a 16-point lead in Game 5, a 19-point lead in Game 6, and a 12-point lead in LA at LA for in Game 7. I'm put quote unquote at LA because they were in the bubble at the time, right? Then the year after, he was hired as the Philadelphia Sixers head coach. He blows an 18-point lead in Game 4 and a 26-point lead in Game 5. And then Game 7 against the Boston Celtics, his last year as the Sixers coach. I don't know if you could really count this, but it is a double-digit lead, so I'm going to have to. He blew an 11-point lead against the Celtics. So yeah, Doc Rivers' legacy is stained. Is it going to be in the Hall of Fame? He's probably going to be because of the general consensus, even though a lot of people will disagree with that. But everyone knows his legacy is stained. And if Doc Rivers wants to at least make amends for it and a tarnished legacy, this is the series to do it. Because if he loses in the first round with Giannis, all those years of all those years of people talking about how great of a head coach he is, what he did in 2008 when he won a championship with the Celtics, and what he's done with, like, he's put his teams in like winning seasons since 2008 and yada yada yada, blase blase blase. Ain't none of that gonna matter. All of that will be irrelevant, and Doc Rivers will be in coaching irrelevancy. And it can happen because he can't be a great head coach, but he has all these stains and blemishes on it. If he at least wants to make amends for it, this is the series to do it. And he has no excuse this time. Last year, I gave him a pass because Dame was not 100%. And, you can't really choke a series with role players. You can choke a game with role players and a decent all-star. Look at Paul George and the Clippers that one year. Choked that game 2 against the Suns where Paul misses both free throws. And then DeAndre Ayton hits the alley-oop game winner. But this time, Doc Rivers has Giannis. And there should not be an excuse if they lose in the first round. There should be zero excuses. Now, on the other hand, when it comes to the Indiana Pacers, could they win the series? Sure. But they need to really keep playing the type of ball that they played against the Bucks last year. And it's going to be harder now because Giannis will now be on the other side fully healthy. But they can still win it. But they need to keep playing the way they've been playing. And they got to exploit Milwaukee in transition. So, obviously, this is taking way too long. I'm going to try to condense this as much as I can. But if you guys want my personal rundown on the series, this is how I think the series is going to go. So, I'm going to pick the Bucks in 6 games. Okay? So, let's go through my final score predictions throughout all 6 of those games, and I'll be making my way out of here, and I'll be making my next Pistons video. Okay, all right. So game 1, Indiana wins in a very close game. I have them winning 112 to 110. Milwaukee plays good. They hang in there, but Indiana will beat them in a very close game. Tyrese Halliburton hits the game winner. And Milwaukee has a chance to tie it or take the lead. They miss the shot. Game 2, it'll be sort of a close game, but in the end, I think Milwaukee pulls away with a 13-point win. I'll have them winning 111-98. And then just like last year, Game 3, I think will go to overtime, but I have this going to 2 OTs. I have Milwaukee winning that game 126-123. Bobby Portis hits clutch shots. Gary Trent Jr. hits clutch shots. Kevin Porter Jr. hits clutch shots. And obviously, Giannis is going to have an MVP game. I think Game 4 will be similar to what we saw in the OKC Dallas series last year. In that Game 4, I think it'll be a really good game for the most part. But I think Indiana comes out. They escape with a win in Milwaukee. I have Indiana win that game 106-105. They'll be tied at 2 going back to Indiana. And I think Game 5 will go to OT. So there's going to be another overtime game. But I think the Milwaukee Bucks pull it out 112-106. And then Game 6, I have the Milwaukee Bucks winning by 10. Giannis finally gets his revenge. The Bucks prove to the NBA world that they only lost last year because Giannis was hurt. And I am predicting that in the tail end of the series, I'm talking Games 5, 6, and maybe Game 7, Damian Lillard will play. I don't know how he's going to play. I don't know how that blood clot's going to react because of the fact blood clots are serious, but I've heard that he's been progressing very well. Doc Rivers has said that he's done like light running and such. But if Lillard can be 70, 75, 80% of the Lillard we all know and love, then the Pacers don't have a chance in hell. I'm sorry. And it's better, too, because Giannis Antetokounmpo is on the other side. And I think last year, they probably would have lost the series against Indiana, but Giannis would have given them a fighter's chance because of the fact that he averaged 30 and 12 against a tough Boston Celtics defense the last time we saw Giannis at his absolute best. I think he can do the same thing against Indiana. So, this should be a very fun series. I have the Bucks in 6. Let me know what you guys think. So, I'm going to get to work on the next Pistons video, but until then, that's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.